The northern mountains had not seen spring in years. Snow blanketed every cliff, every pine tree, and every forgotten path beneath a silent layer of white. The wind never truly stopped. It whispered through the ancient forest like restless spirits searching for something they had lost long ago. Hidden beyond the frozen valley stood the Ashfang Pack. Once respected throughout the kingdoms, it had become a place where strength ruled above kindness. Every wolf knew their place, and those born weak were reminded of it every single day. Among them lived 18-year-old Lyra, an Omega. To the pack, that single word was enough to decide her future. She woke before sunrise every morning while the strongest warriors still slept. By dawn she had already hauled water from the frozen river, chopped wood until her hands blistered, and cleaned the Alpha Manor's stone floors without hearing a single word of thanks. If anything went wrong, it was always blamed on her. If food disappeared, if livestock escaped, if someone lost their temper, the Omega received the punishment. Lyra had stopped defending herself years ago. Silence hurt less than arguing. Only one place in the entire territory brought her peace. Far above the village, hidden between ancient cedar trees, rested a lonely hill where no other wolf ever climbed. At its summit stood one weathered gravestone. Her mother's. The pack claimed Myra had died from sickness. Lyra never believed them. Whenever life became unbearable, she climbed the snowy trail carrying fresh mountain flowers. Sitting beside the old stone, she spoke softly about everything she could never tell another soul. Today was different. It marked exactly 10 years since her mother's death. The flowers trembled in her freezing hands as she knelt before the grave. "I still remember your smile," she whispered into the winter air. The wind answered. Nothing more. For several quiet moments she simply sat there, allowing memories to replace the loneliness that filled every corner of her heart. Then, crunch. Snow shifted somewhere behind her. Lyra froze. No one ever came here. Slowly she turned. Nothing. Only endless white forest. She convinced herself it had been a falling branch. Another sound echoed. Closer this time. Crunch. Crunch. Her pulse quickened. Something large moved between the trees. Golden eyes appeared first. Then another pair. Then another. 1, 3, 5. Massive wolves emerged from the shadows without making another sound. Their silver-white fur almost disappeared against the snow itself. They weren't hunting. They weren't growling. They simply watched. Lyra stumbled backward until her shoulder touched the gravestone. She knew these wolves. Not individually, but by reputation. Moon guardians. Ancient wolves spoken of only in stories told beside winter fires. According to legend, they protected sacred places chosen by the moon goddess herself. No one had seen them for generations. Yet 6 enormous wolves now surrounded the lonely hill. Why? None attacked. Instead, every wolf lowered its head toward the gravestone. Respect. Not aggression. Lyra stared in disbelief. "What are you doing?" The question disappeared into the cold air. The wolves remained perfectly still. A stronger gust swept across the hill. Snow spiraled upward like dancing spirits. From within the swirling white mist. Footsteps. Heavy. Steady. A tall figure emerged wearing a dark traveling cloak lined with white fur. His face remained hidden beneath the hood. The wolves immediately stepped aside. Not because they feared him. Because they obeyed him. Lyra's instinct screamed. Run. But her legs refused to move. The stranger stopped several feet away from the grave. Without speaking, he slowly removed one leather glove. Then, he placed his hand gently upon the weathered stone. For a long moment he closed his eyes. His expression carried something Lyra had never expected to see upon a warrior's face. Regret. Deep. Unshakable regret. "I am late," the stranger murmured. His voice barely rose above the wind. "But I kept my promise." Lyra's breath caught. Promise? What promise? Before she could ask, the wolves suddenly lifted their heads together. Every ear pointed toward the forest. Danger. The stranger sensed it instantly. His calm vanished. His eyes snapped toward the trees. "Leave," he ordered quietly. Lyra blinked. "What?" Someone followed you. Fear tightened around her chest. I came alone. You believed you did. The wolves spread outward, forming a protective circle around both Lyra and the grave. Silence returned. Then, a distant whistle echoed through the forest. Not from nature. From people. Hidden observers. Watching. Waiting. The cloaked warrior's jaw tightened. They found this place sooner than I feared. Lyra's heart pounded louder with every passing second. She looked from the stranger to the wolves. None seemed surprised. Almost as if they had expected this moment for years. Who are you? She finally whispered. The man looked toward her. Moonlight reflected beneath his hood. For the first time, Lyra noticed the silver markings glowing faintly beneath his eyes. Royal markings. Impossible. Only one bloodline carried those symbols. The ruling family of the Northern Kingdom. The stranger lowered his head respectfully toward her mother's grave once more. My name is Caelan. He paused. The debt I owe your family can never truly be repaid. Before Lyra could understand his words, an arrow exploded from the darkness. The wolves reacted instantly. One leaped into its path. The wooden shaft shattered against its shoulder. Another howl thundered across the mountains. Not 6 wolves. Not 10. Dozens answered from every direction. The forest itself had awakened. Hidden beneath the snow-covered trees, unseen eyes began opening one after another. The hunters who had secretly followed Lyra suddenly realized. They were no longer the ones doing the hunting. And somewhere deep within the frozen wilderness, an ancient secret, buried for more than a decade, had finally begun to stir. The first howl rolled across the mountains like thunder. It wasn't a cry of fear. It was a warning. The forest answered with another, then another, until the frozen valley echoed with voices that hadn't been heard together in generations. Hidden beneath snow-covered branches, shadows moved with impossible speed. The hunters froze. They had expected one frightened Omega, perhaps a wandering rogue. Instead, they had stumbled into the territory of the Moon Guardians. Lyra's heartbeat hammered against her ribs. She had grown up hearing stories meant to frighten children into obeying pack rules. The Moon Guardians were only legends. Ancient wolves blessed by the Moon Goddess herself. No one believed they truly existed. Yet 6 of them stood only a few steps away. Their glowing silver eyes never left the dark forest. The cloaked stranger remained perfectly calm. His gaze swept across the trees as though counting invisible enemies. They're testing us, he said quietly. They won't attack yet. Lyra swallowed. Who are they? The ones who fear forgotten truths. Before she could ask another question, one of the white wolves stepped beside her. Its enormous head reached nearly to her shoulder. Instead of growling, it gently nudged her hand with its nose. Warm. Gentle. Almost comforting. Lyra stared in disbelief. No wolf had ever treated an Omega with kindness. Not even the wolves of her own pack. She slowly placed trembling fingers against the creature's thick white fur. The wolf closed its eyes peacefully. A strange warmth spread through her palm. Not heat. Something deeper. A quiet feeling she couldn't explain. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. The stranger noticed. A faint smile appeared beneath his hood. They remember. Lyra looked up. Remember what? Before he could answer, another sharp whistle echoed through the forest. This time it came from the eastern ridge. Then another from the west. They were being surrounded. The wolves shifted positions immediately. Without commands. Without hesitation. Every movement was perfectly synchronized. Lyra watched in amazement. They fought like one living soul. The stranger reached beneath his cloak. Instead of drawing a weapon, he removed a small silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon. Time had darkened its surface, but one symbol still glowed faintly. When Lyra saw it, her breath caught. Around her neck hung an identical pendant. Her mother had placed it there before she died. She had always believed it was nothing more than an old family keepsake. The stranger's expression changed the moment he noticed hers. You still have it. Lyra instinctively covered the necklace. How do you know this symbol? He looked toward the gravestone. Because your mother wore its twin the day we made our oath. Questions flooded Lyra's mind. You knew my mother. He nodded once. She saved far more lives than history remembers. Another branch snapped. Closer. This time several dark figures stepped from behind the trees. They wore heavy black cloaks marked with the crest of the Fang Council. Each carried silver-tipped weapons. Not soldiers. Executioners. Their leader removed his hood. A scar crossed one side of his face. His cold eyes settled on Lyra. There she is. The words sent ice through her veins. He hadn't looked at the stranger. He wasn't hunting him. He had come for her. The stranger slowly stepped forward, placing himself between Lyra and the newcomers. This mountain is sacred. So was the truth, the scarred man replied. You buried both. Silence followed. Even the wind seemed to stop. The stranger's voice remained calm. Leave. The executioner laughed. The council waited 10 years for this girl to return. He pointed directly at Lyra. She carries something that should have died with her mother. Lyra instinctively touched the moon pendant again. Was that what they wanted? The scarred man continued. You have one chance. Hand over the Omega. The council may allow the wolves to leave alive. Several moon guardians bared their enormous fangs. Snow drifted from the pine trees as low growls vibrated through the frozen ground. The stranger never moved. No. Only one word. Quiet. Certain. The executioner's smile disappeared. So be it. He raised one hand. More figures emerged. 10. 15. Nearly 20 armed hunters surrounded the hill. Lyra's hope vanished. There were too many. She looked toward the stranger. He still hadn't drawn a weapon. Instead, he removed his hood. Moonlight fell across his face. Silver markings curved beneath both eyes like flowing streams. His hair shimmered pale as fresh snow. An ancient wolf crest rested upon his forehead. Every hunter immediately stiffened. One even stumbled backward. No. Someone whispered. It can't be. The scarred leader's confidence cracked. You disappeared 5 years ago. I chose silence, the stranger replied. But I will not choose cowardice. He slowly lifted one hand toward the sky. Nothing happened. 4 heartbeat. Then, the clouds parted. A single beam of moonlight struck the snowy hill. Every white wolf began to glow. Their silver fur shone like polished crystal beneath the full moon. The air itself seemed alive. The hunters exchanged frightened glances. Legends. Every terrifying legend about the moon guardians had been true. The stranger's eyes reflected the moonlight. My name is Caelan. Last guardian of the moon throne. I have protected this secret for 10 years. His gaze hardened. And I will protect it for 10 more if I must. A silence heavier than snow settled across the mountain. No one moved. No one breathed. Then, far below the hill, a deep horn echoed from the valley. Once, twice, 3 times. The stranger closed his eyes. They're here. Lyra frowned. Who? He looked toward the distant lights slowly climbing the mountain road. The Ashfang Pack. Torches flickered like rivers of fire through the darkness. At their front marched Lyra's own Alpha. His expression burned with anger. Someone had betrayed her visit. She suddenly understood. This was never simply an ambush. It had been a trap from the very beginning. Now 3 powerful forces were converging on the sacred hill, the Fang Council, the Ashfang Pack, and the mysterious Moon Guardians. Standing at the center of them all was one frightened Omega who still had no idea why every powerful wolf in the kingdom seemed willing to fight over a simple silver pendant. As the first torchlight reached the edge of the forest, Caelan whispered a sentence that made Lyra's blood run cold. They're not coming to arrest you. They're coming to awaken what has slept inside you since the night your mother died. The ground beneath the ancient gravestone trembled ever so slightly. Something buried beneath the frozen earth had heard his words. And it was beginning to awaken. The mountain seemed to hold its breath. 3 armies stood frozen beneath the pale moonlight. On one side, the warriors of Ashfang Pack tightened their grip on spears and swords, their alpha glaring toward the lonely hill with barely concealed fury. Opposite them waited the black-cloaked executioners of the Iron Fang Council, their silver weapons glinting beneath the snow. Between both forces stood 6 silent moon guardians. They neither growled nor moved. Yet somehow they appeared more dangerous than every armed wolf surrounding them. Lyra could barely breathe. Only hours ago she had been an unnoticed Omega carrying flowers to her mother's grave. Now every powerful faction in the kingdom had gathered because of her. It made no sense. Caelan stepped beside her without taking his eyes off the approaching armies. "No matter what happens," he said quietly, "do not remove the pendant." Lyra instinctively covered the silver crescent hanging around her neck. "Why?" "Because the moment it leaves your hands, those who have hunted your family for years will finally claim what they failed to take." His words sent another chill through her. Her family. Not just her. Not just her mother. Someone had been hunting them for years. Before she could ask another question, the Alpha of Ashfang climbed the final steps to the sacred hill. His heavy boots crushed the untouched snow. Behind him marched nearly 40 elite warriors. His sharp amber eyes settled on Lyra. "There you are." His voice carried no relief. Only anger. "You left the territory without permission." Lyra lowered her gaze by instinct. Old habits were difficult to break. But before she could apologize, Caelan moved slightly in front of her. The Alpha's expression darkened. "And who are you to stand between an Alpha and one of his pack?" Caelan answered calmly. "She no longer stands alone." A murmur spread through both armies. The Ashfang warriors exchanged uneasy glances. No one had ever spoken to their Alpha with such quiet confidence. The Alpha laughed bitterly. "She is an Omega. My Omega. I decide her future." For the first time since meeting him, Caelan's calm expression hardened. "No one owns another soul." The words echoed across the silent mountain. Even the wind seemed to pause. The Ashfang Alpha's pride flared. "You dare lecture me?" He stepped forward. Immediately every moon guardian shifted. 6 enormous wolves formed a living wall between Caelan and the Alpha. Their glowing eyes never blinked. The Alpha hesitated. He had fought many wolves during his life. None had looked at him like these. Not with hatred. With judgment. Meanwhile, the leader of the Iron Fang Council watched everything in silence. Exactly as he had hoped. If the Ashfang Pack and the Moon Guardians fought each other, the Council could seize the pendant amid the chaos. He slowly raised 2 fingers behind his back. One hidden assassin slipped into the forest. No one noticed. Except one guardian. The white wolf vanished silently into the darkness. A heartbeat later, a distant scream shattered the silence. Then nothing. The assassin never returned. The council leader's face tightened. These guardians missed nothing. Caelan slowly knelt beside the weathered gravestone. His hand brushed away a layer of fresh snow, revealing strange symbols carved into the ancient stone. Lyra frowned. She had visited this place hundreds of times. She had never seen those markings before. "They only appear beneath the winter moon," Caelan whispered. The symbols shimmered with pale blue light. The pendant around Lyra's neck suddenly grew warm. Very warm. She gasped and instinctively grasped it. The light spread from the necklace into her fingertips like flowing water. Everyone saw it. The council warriors immediately stepped backward. Several whispered frightened prayers. The Ashfang Alpha stared in confusion. "What is she?" Caelan finally answered the question no one had dared ask. "She is the last keeper." Silence. No one understood. Except the council leader. His face drained of color. So the bloodline survived. He whispered the words almost to himself. Without warning, he shouted a single command. "Take the girl." The executioners charged. Snow exploded beneath dozens of pounding feet. But before they reached the hill, the earth itself trembled. A deep rumble echoed beneath the frozen ground. Cracks spread across the snow in glowing silver lines. The ancient gravestone began to shine. Lyra stumbled backward as an invisible force surrounded her. The pendant lifted from her chest, floating in the cold air. She tried to grab it. She couldn't move. The light grew brighter, stronger. The wolves lowered themselves respectfully. Even Caelan bowed his head. The Ashfang warriors stared in stunned silence. From somewhere beneath the mountain came a sound unlike anything Lyra had ever heard. Not a roar, not a howl. A heartbeat. Slow, powerful, ancient. Boom, boom, boom. Each pulse shook the frozen valley. The council executioners stopped charging. Fear replaced determination. One whispered words his companions never expected to hear. The heart of winter. It still lives. Lyra looked toward Caelan, desperate for answers. His eyes never left the glowing stone. The truth your mother died protecting, he whispered, has finally awakened. The heartbeat echoed once more. This time it answered from deep within Lyra herself. And she realized with growing terror. The mountain was not calling her. It was recognizing her. The heartbeat beneath the mountain faded into silence. Yet its echo refused to leave Lyra's soul. She pressed a trembling hand against her chest. The rhythm was still there. Slow, ancient, alive. Around the sacred hill, no one dared move. Even the Iron Fang executioners lowered their weapons, uncertain whether they faced a frightened Omega or something far older. Snow drifted gently through the moonlight. The floating pendant finally settled back against Lyra's chest. The silver glow slowly dimmed. Caelan stepped closer. His normally calm expression carried both relief and concern. It recognized you. Lyra swallowed. I don't understand any of this. I know. For 18 years you were told you were weak. You were never weak. You were hidden. The word struck deeper than any blade. Hidden. Not forgotten. Not abandoned. Protected. Before Lyra could ask another question, the Ashfang Alpha stepped forward. His pride had given way to suspicion. What exactly is a keeper? Caelan remained silent for several moments. Then he looked toward the ancient gravestone. Long before the modern packs existed, the moon goddess entrusted one family with protecting the heart of winter. The heart was never a weapon. It was a promise. A promise that no alpha would ever gain absolute power over every pack. The council leader's face darkened. Enough. He raised his sword. You have already revealed too much. Without warning, he lunged toward Lyra. A moon guardian intercepted him in a blur of white fur. Steel met Fang. The impact threw snow high into the air. Chaos erupted. The executioners attacked from every direction. Ashfang warriors instinctively defended themselves as the battle spread across the hill. Lyra stumbled backward until she reached her mother's grave. She wanted to help. Instead, fear rooted her in place. Caelan fought without rage. Every movement was calm and precise. He disarmed opponents instead of killing them. The Guardians fought the same way. Protect. Never pursue. Defend. Never destroy. The council warriors, however, showed no mercy. One executioner slipped through the fighting and rushed toward Lyra with a silver dagger. She froze. The blade came closer. 10 steps. 5. 3. Suddenly the ground beneath her feet burst open. A column of silver light exploded from beneath the gravestone. The executioner cried out as an invisible force hurled him across the clearing. He landed unconscious in the snow. Everyone stopped. The light rose higher than the surrounding pine trees. Within its center appeared countless glowing symbols circling slowly around Lyra. She stared in amazement. I didn't do that. No, Caelan answered softly. The mountain did. The symbols drifted toward the gravestone before sinking into the ancient stone once again. Silence returned. One elderly Ashfang warrior slowly removed his helmet. Tears filled his eyes. I've seen those symbols before. Every head turned toward him. It was 25 years ago. I was only a young scout. I saw the former keepers standing beneath the winter temple. I thought I had imagined it. The council leader shouted furiously. "He's lying!" But doubt had already begun spreading through both armies. For years the council had insisted the keepers were only myths. Now the mountain itself had proven otherwise. The Ashfang Alpha looked from Lyra to Caelan. His certainty was fading. "If what you're saying is true, then why hide her?" Caelan's answer came quietly. "Because every keeper before her was murdered." A heavy silence settled across the battlefield. The council soldiers lowered their eyes. Several knew the accusation was true. Others had only followed orders without asking why. Lyra felt the world shifting beneath her. Her mother, the pendant, the grave. None of it had been ordinary. Everything had been part of a truth carefully hidden from her. The council leader realized he was losing control. He slowly stepped backward. "This isn't over." He gave one sharp whistle. The remaining executioners immediately retreated into the forest. Within moments they disappeared among the snow-covered trees. Only silence remained. Ashfang's warriors watched them leave without pursuit. No one wished to continue fighting. Too many questions remained unanswered. The Alpha turned toward Lyra. For the first time since she was a child. His voice softened. "If everything we've believed was false." He struggled to finish the sentence. Lyra looked into his eyes. She saw confusion instead of arrogance. Fear instead of certainty. She finally understood. The lies had imprisoned everyone. Not only her. Caelan rested a reassuring hand upon her shoulder. This was only the beginning. Lyra looked toward the glowing gravestone. "What happens now?" Caelan gazed beyond the mountains where dark clouds gathered on the distant horizon. "The council will not stop. They've searched for the heart of winter for generations. They now know its keeper lives." The Moon Guardians lifted their heads together. Far away, a deep wolf howl echoed across the northern wilderness. It was answered by another. Then another. Not hostile. Not threatening. A summons. Caelan smiled faintly. "They're coming." "Who?" "The old packs. The ones who never forgot the ancient oath." Lyra followed his gaze toward the distant mountains. Tiny lights appeared far across the snowfields. Campfires. Dozens of them. Moving closer. One by one. The kingdom had begun to awaken. And for the first time in centuries, hope traveled through the frozen north faster than fear. Dawn never truly arrived. The northern sky remained hidden behind thick silver clouds as though the heavens themselves refused to witness what was about to unfold. Snow drifted lazily across the sacred mountain, covering the scars left by the night's battle. Broken arrows, shattered blades, and crimson stains slowly disappeared beneath fresh white powder. Nature buried conflict without judgment. But memories could not be covered so easily. Lyra stood beside her mother's gravestone, unable to pull her eyes away from the weathered stone. Everything she had believed about her life had changed in a single night. She had always considered herself the weakest wolf in Ashfang. Now strangers crossed kingdoms because of her. Because of a bloodline she never knew existed. The silver pendant rested quietly against her chest once again, but its warmth remained. It no longer felt like jewelry. It felt alive. A soft crunch echoed behind her. Caelan approached carrying 2 steaming wooden cups. "You haven't slept." Lyra accepted one. "I close my eyes, but every time I do, I hear that heartbeat again." Caelan nodded. "You will." "For a while." She looked toward him. What exactly awakened beneath this mountain? He stared across the frozen valley. Not what. Who? His answer left more questions than comfort. Before she could speak again, one of the Moon Guardians released a low growl. Every Guardian immediately turned toward the northern ridge. Something was approaching. Not enemies. Visitors. Far below, dozens of wolves climbed the mountain trail in perfect silence. Unlike ordinary packs, none carried banners. None shouted challenges. Each wore different colors, different armor, and different clan markings. Some traveled alone. Others came in small groups. Gray wolves. Black wolves. Golden wolves. Even rare blue-eyed Arctic wolves walked among them. Lyra counted nearly 50 before giving up. "They're from different packs," she whispered. Caelan smiled. "They haven't gathered together in over 100 years." One by one, the newcomers reached the summit. None spoke. Each walked directly toward the gravestone. Then, to Lyra's complete surprise, every single leader bowed. Not to Caelan. Not to the Moon Guardians. To her mother's grave. The silence became overwhelming. An elderly she-wolf stepped forward first. Her silver hair flowed beneath a fur-lined cloak embroidered with ancient runes. She gently placed a white lily beside the gravestone. "I never believed I would return here." Another alpha followed. He rested the tip of his sword against the snow. "We failed your family once. We will not fail them again." Lyra's throat tightened. She didn't know these wolves. Yet tears filled their eyes as they honored the woman she had buried almost alone. The realization struck harder than any weapon. Her mother had never been forgotten. She had been remembered in secret. Caelan noticed the tears forming in Lyra's eyes. They kept their promise. What promise? He pointed toward the gathering alphas. To remain hidden until the keeper awakened. The elderly she-wolf finally approached Lyra. Her gentle smile carried decades of sorrow. "You have your mother's eyes." Lyra swallowed hard. "You knew her." "I owed her my life." Another alpha nodded. "So did I." Then another. "And mine." One after another, leaders stepped forward. Each carried a different story. A kingdom saved from famine. A child rescued during war. A peace treaty prevented. A family protected. Every memory ended the same way. A woman named Lyra had asked for nothing in return. Lyra's heart ached. Her mother had spent her life helping others. Yet Ashfang had remembered her only as an ordinary Omega who died quietly. Why? Why erase someone so good? As though hearing her thoughts, Caelan answered. "The council feared people like your mother." "Why?" "Because kindness inspires loyalty that power never can." The words settled over the gathering like fresh snow. Suddenly a sharp cry interrupted the peaceful moment. A young scout sprinted up the mountain, breathing heavily. He collapsed onto one knee. "They're moving." Every alpha looked toward him. "The council." The scout nodded. "Not only the council." He struggled to catch his breath. "They've hired rogue packs. Mercenaries. Hundreds of them." A ripple of concern spread across the gathering. The council had failed through secrecy. Now they intended to win through numbers. One veteran alpha struck the frozen ground with his spear. "Let them come." Another shook his head. "That's exactly what they want." Caelan remained silent until every voice faded. "They won't attack the mountain." The others looked toward him. "They know they cannot defeat the Guardians here." "Then where?" someone asked. Caelan turned toward Lyra. "They'll attack Ashfang." The words hit her like ice water. "My village. They believe you'll return to protect innocent people." And they're right. Lyra's hands clenched. The people of Ashfang had ignored her, mocked her. Yet innocent children still lived there. Families, elders, people who knew nothing about the council's lies. She couldn't allow them to suffer. "They're using them as bait." Caelan nodded once. "They're counting on your heart." The elderly she-wolf stepped beside Lyra. "Your mother would have made the same choice." That truth hurt. Because it meant there was no easy path. Save strangers. Or protect herself. Caelan slowly unfolded an old map across a flat stone. "The council expects us to rush." "We won't." He pointed toward 3 mountain passes leading into Ashfang territory. "They'll divide their forces." "So will we." Leaders gathered around the map. For the first time in generations, rival packs planned together instead of competing. Lyra watched quietly. These powerful wolves listened when Caelan spoke. Not because he demanded obedience. Because he earned trust. She had never seen leadership like that before. No shouting. No threats, only respect. As strategies formed, one of the younger alphas frowned. What if the council reaches Ashfang first? Silence followed. Caelan looked toward the endless white forest stretching below. Then we pray we're not too late. Far beyond the mountains, hidden within a dark fortress, the scar-faced commander of the Iron Fang Council stood before a roaring fire. A hooded figure waited in the shadows. You failed. The commander lowered his head. The keeper awakened. The hooded figure remained motionless. And the heart? Still sealed. A long silence followed. Finally the shadowed leader stepped forward just enough for pale golden eyes to become visible beneath the hood. Then it's time. He reached into an ancient wooden chest. Inside rested a black crystal pulsing with crimson light. The wolves still believe the old war ended. His fingers wrapped around the crystal. They're about to discover. It merely fell asleep. Miles away, Lyra suddenly shivered. The warmth inside her pendant vanished. Cold spread through the silver crescent. Caelan sensed the change instantly. He looked toward the distant horizon where dark storm clouds gathered unnaturally fast. His expression hardened. They've awakened something. The wind changed direction. Snow no longer drifted peacefully. It raced across the mountains like fleeing spirits. And somewhere beyond the northern peaks, something ancient answered the call. The wind carried the scent of smoke. Before anyone saw the first column of black rising into the grey morning sky, the moon guardians had already lifted their heads. Their ears twitched. Their muscles tightened. Something terrible had begun. Lyra followed Caelan to the edge of the mountain cliffs. From there the forest stretched for miles, their endless blanket of white broken only by a thin ribbon of dark smoke climbing toward the clouds. Her heart dropped. Ashfang. Caelan didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. The answer was written across his face. The council had moved faster than expected. The elderly alpha from Frost River Pack stepped beside them, gripping his carved staff. They've burned the outer watchtowers. Another scout arrived moments later, sliding to one knee in the snow. The southern farms are under attack. The villagers are fleeing toward the central gates. The council isn't taking prisoners. Silence followed. Lyra felt the familiar ache in her chest. Those people had never accepted her. Many had insulted her. Some had ignored her existence completely. Yet innocent children lived among them. Old healers. Workers. Families who had never held power. Fear did not choose between guilty and innocent. Caelan looked toward the gathered leaders. We leave immediately. Within minutes the mountain transformed into organized movement. Ancient pack leaders issued calm orders. Warriors tightened armor. Scouts disappeared into the forest. The moon guardians spread through the snow like silent ghosts, taking positions far ahead of the main force. No one shouted. No one panicked. Every wolf understood what was at stake. Lyra adjusted the cloak one of the elders had given her. For the first time in her life, someone had prepared clothing for her before preparing their own. It felt unfamiliar. Almost uncomfortable. She had spent so many years believing kindness always demanded payment. Yet no one here expected anything from her. Caelan noticed the uncertainty in her expression. You don't have to carry every burden alone anymore. She managed a weak smile. I'm still trying to believe that. They descended the mountain through narrow forest trails hidden beneath towering pines. Fresh snow muffled every footstep. The only sounds were distant wolves calling to one another and the steady whisper of winter winds. As they traveled, Caelan rode beside Lyra. There is something you should know before we reach Ashfang. She looked toward him. The heart of winter isn't simply an ancient relic. You said it was a promise. It is. But promises require guardians. He paused before continuing. Every generation, one keeper is born. They don't inherit power. They inherit responsibility. Lyra frowned. What responsibility? To prevent anyone from using fear to unite every pack beneath a single tyrant. She looked toward the endless forest. My mother carried that burden. Until the day she died. And now. Caelan met her eyes. Now it's yours. The weight of those words settled heavily inside her. She had never asked for greatness. She had only wanted a peaceful life. Yet destiny rarely waited for permission. Hours later the first refugees appeared. A family stumbled from the trees carrying only blankets and frightened children. Their faces were pale with exhaustion. When they recognized Lyra, surprise crossed their expressions. One elderly woman stepped forward. You. Lyra remembered her. Years ago the woman had quietly slipped her extra bread during harsh winters whenever others weren't looking. Small kindnesses mattered. The woman clasped Lyra's hands tightly. They're burning everything. They're asking where you are. Lyra's pulse quickened. They're searching for me. The woman nodded. They said if anyone hides the keeper. Her voice broke. The entire village will suffer. Caelan gently guided the refugees toward waiting healers. The gathered alphas watched the exchange in silence. Now everyone understood. The council wasn't merely hunting Lyra. They intended to force innocent people to betray her. The march resumed. As sunset approached, they reached a ridge overlooking Ashfang Valley. Lyra stopped walking. She barely recognized her home. Smoke drifted from shattered rooftops. Several watchtowers had collapsed. The outer walls were scarred by battle. Villagers rushed between buildings carrying buckets of water while healers treated the wounded in the open square. The council had already left. But they had made certain their message remained. Fear. Caelan rested a hand on Lyra's shoulder. They wanted you to see this. She nodded silently. They wanted me to blame myself. Will you? Lyra stared at the valley for a long moment. The old Lyra would have. She had blamed herself for everything. Every insult. Every punishment. Every cruel word. But something had changed since climbing the sacred mountain. Slowly she shook her head. No. Caelan smiled. Good. Because this destruction belongs to those who chose it. Not to the one they hunted. The main gates opened cautiously as the allied packs approached. Ashfang warriors lowered their weapons in disbelief. Never before had so many rival clans entered together. The Ashfang Alpha emerged from the damaged hall. His shoulders looked heavier than Lyra remembered. Pride had been replaced by responsibility. He walked directly toward her. For a long moment neither spoke. Finally he bowed his head. Only slightly. But enough. I was wrong. The words stunned every warrior nearby. An Alpha rarely admitted fault. Especially before an Omega. Lyra searched his face. She found no arrogance. Only regret. I judged you by lies. I judged your mother even more harshly. I cannot erase that. But I will not repeat it. The village fell silent. Children peeked from behind broken wagons. Elders watched from shattered doorways. History itself seemed to pause. Lyra could have answered with anger. She had every reason. Instead she remembered something Caelan had told her. Kindness inspires loyalty. Fear never can. We rebuild together. That was all she said. The Alpha closed his eyes briefly, perhaps expecting condemnation. Instead he found forgiveness. Word spread through the village within minutes. The forgotten Omega had returned. Not with vengeance. With hope. As darkness settled over Ashfang, fires were lit throughout the square. Not for celebration. For rebuilding. Warriors from rival packs worked side by side repairing damaged homes. Healers treated strangers without asking which pack they served. Children laughed for the first time since the attack. Watching from a nearby rooftop, the Moon Guardians remained silent. Caelan stood beside them, gazing toward the northern horizon. His peaceful expression slowly faded. Far beyond the valley, a crimson glow flickered above the distant mountains. Not fire. Something older. Something unnatural. One guardian released a deep warning growl. Caelan whispered under his breath. The shadow crystal. It has awakened. Hundreds of miles away, inside the Iron Fang fortress, The hooded leader placed the black crystal upon an ancient altar. Dark energy spread through forgotten runes carved into the stone floor. The chamber shook violently. From somewhere deep beneath the fortress came an earth-shaking roar. A pair of enormous crimson eyes opened in the darkness. The creature had slept for centuries. Now, it was awake. And it had only one purpose: to hunt the last keeper. The celebration did not last long. Before midnight, every fire burning within Ashfang village dimmed at once. No wind blew through the streets. No snow drifted from the rooftops. Even the horses became restless, stamping nervously against the frozen ground. Something was wrong. Lyra stepped outside the healer's cabin where exhausted villagers had finally fallen asleep. The moon hung high above the valley, yet its silver light seemed weaker than before. It was almost as if darkness itself was swallowing the sky. Across the village square, the moon guardians suddenly rose together. Their ears pointed north. Every muscle in their bodies tightened. Caelan emerged from the council hall only seconds later. He had sensed it too. The barrier is breaking. Lyra frowned. What barrier? He looked toward the distant mountains where an unnatural crimson glow pulsed against the horizon. The barrier your ancestors built around the Winter Temple. His voice carried something she had never heard before. Fear. Not fear for himself. Fear for the kingdom. Within moments, every allied alpha gathered in the square. The elderly alpha of Frost River Pack leaned heavily upon his carved staff. The crystal has begun feeding. Another leader shook his head. It shouldn't be possible. The temple has remained sealed for centuries. Caelan answered quietly. It remained sealed because the keepers lived. His eyes settled on Lyra. When your mother died. The seal began weakening. Silence settled over the gathering. Lyra's heart grew heavy. My mother carried that burden alone. For 23 years. And no one helped her. We offered. But she refused. She believed protecting others was worth every sacrifice. Lyra closed her eyes. For years she had believed her mother died forgotten. Instead, she had died protecting people who never even knew her name. A lump formed in her throat. I never thanked her. Caelan gently rested a hand upon her shoulder. She never expected thanks. Only that one day. You would choose hope instead of hatred. Before Lyra could answer, a terrified scout raced into the village. He collapsed to one knee. The northern forest. Everyone turned toward him. It's gone. What do you mean? He struggled to breathe. The trees. They're turning black. Another scout arrived only moments later. The river has frozen solid. The ice isn't white. It's red. Uneasy murmurs spread among the gathered warriors. Nature itself was changing. The shadow crystal wasn't simply awakening. It was poisoning the land. Caelan looked toward the crimson glow. We don't have much time. The Ashfang Alpha stepped forward. Tell us what must be done. Caelan nodded once. The Winter Temple lies beyond the broken peaks. It is where the heart of winter was first entrusted to the keepers. The seal must be restored. The Frost River Alpha frowned. Only a keeper can enter the inner sanctuary. And if she fails? Caelan didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his words fell like stones. The darkness will spread beyond the northern kingdoms. No pack will survive. Lyra looked toward the frightened villagers gathered nearby. Children clung to their parents. Elders whispered desperate prayers. For the first time, she truly understood the weight of the legacy she carried. This was no longer about her family. It was about everyone. She stepped forward before fear could stop her. We leave at sunrise. The gathered alphas looked at one another. Not because she had given an order. Because they realized they were witnessing the birth of a true keeper. Not through power. Through courage. No one argued. Preparations began immediately. Healers packed medicines. Scouts sharpened blades. The Moon Guardians silently disappeared into the surrounding forests, scouting the safest route toward the ancient temple. Hours passed. Most of the village slept. Lyra couldn't. She wandered quietly toward the rebuilt grave of her mother at the edge of Ashfang. Moonlight reflected across the fresh snow. She knelt before the simple stone. So much was hidden from me. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I don't know if I'm strong enough. Silence answered. Then, the pendant around her neck grew warm once more. A soft silver light spread across the gravestone. Before Lyra's astonished eyes, tiny glowing flowers pushed through the frozen snow. Winter lilies. Impossible. They bloomed only in legends. A gentle breeze surrounded her although the night remained perfectly still. She closed her eyes. For the briefest moment. She thought she heard a familiar voice. Not words. Just warmth. Just comfort. The same feeling she remembered from childhood whenever her mother embraced her. A single tear rolled down her cheek. I'll try. The silver light slowly faded. Behind her, Caelan had witnessed everything without interrupting. When Lyra stood, he smiled quietly. She answered you. You saw it. I felt it. He looked toward the blooming flowers. The keepers never truly leave. They remain wherever hope survives. Before either could speak again, a deafening roar echoed across the valley. The ground shook violently. Villagers rushed from their homes in panic. Far beyond the northern mountains, a towering column of crimson fire erupted into the sky. Dark clouds twisted around it like living creatures. The moon guardians howled together. Not in warning. In mourning. Caelan's expression hardened. The shadow beast has escaped. Every alpha immediately reached for their weapons. No one asked what the shadow beast was. They could already feel it. The air had grown colder than winter itself. Somewhere beyond the mountains, an ancient predator had begun hunting once again. And every instinct inside Lyra told her one terrifying truth. It wasn't searching for kingdoms. It wasn't searching for armies. It was searching for her. The roar echoed across the frozen kingdom long after the mountains stopped shaking. No wolf moved. No one spoke. Even the moon guardians, whose courage had never faltered, stood perfectly still with their eyes fixed upon the crimson horizon. Lyra felt something inside her chest tighten. The warmth of the silver pendant had vanished. In its place came a strange heaviness, as though an invisible hand had wrapped around her heart. Caelan slowly stepped beside her. It knows. She looked at him. What knows? The shadow beast. It has awakened because it sensed the keeper. Far beyond the northern peaks, another roar rolled through the valleys. This one was closer. The villagers instinctively gathered their children. Warriors tightened their grip on swords and spears, though every experienced alpha understood one painful truth. Steel alone would never stop an ancient creature. Before sunrise, the allied leaders gathered one final time. A large map lay across a wooden table inside Ashfang's council hall. The winter temple stood at its center. 3 mountain passes surrounded it. Every route was dangerous. The Frost River Alpha traced one narrow trail with his finger. The western path is shorter. Caelan shook his head. It collapsed decades ago. Another Alpha pointed toward the eastern valley. The council will expect us there. Exactly, Caelan replied. We won't use it. Instead, he rested his hand upon the oldest path on the map. A forgotten trail disappearing beneath the ice cliffs. Only the original keepers knew this route. Several elderly leaders exchanged surprised glances. I thought it was only a legend. So did everyone else. Caelan folded the map. That is why it remains our only chance. As preparations continued, Lyra quietly walked toward the village well. She needed a moment away from the constant discussions of war. The village was changing. People who once ignored her now greeted her with gentle smiles. Children no longer hid behind their parents. An elderly blacksmith approached carrying a beautifully crafted dagger. He held it out with trembling hands. It belonged to your mother. Lyra stared at the weapon. The silver blade reflected the morning light. Its handle was carved from white ash wood, wrapped with faded blue leather. I can't take this. You must. The old blacksmith smiled sadly. She left it with me years ago. She said. He paused, swallowing hard. When my daughter finally learns who she is, give this back to her. Tears blurred Lyra's vision. Her mother had known. Somehow, she had known this day would come. Lyra accepted the dagger carefully. The moment her fingers touched the hilt, ancient runes along the blade shimmered softly. Not bright enough for others to notice, but bright enough for her. The weapon had recognized its rightful owner. Nearby, Caelan watched without interrupting. He remembered the day Lyra had forged that very blade. She had laughed while insisting it wasn't meant for battle. It's meant to remind her, she had said, that mercy is stronger than fear. The memory made him smile. Then his expression darkened. Across the valley, one moon guardian suddenly appeared from the forest. Blood stained the white fur along its shoulder. The wolf approached silently before lowering itself before Caelan. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The guardian touched its nose to the snow. 3 deep claw marks appeared. Far larger than any wolf's. Caelan's face lost all color. The shadow beast has crossed the northern river. One alpha frowned. How far away? Caelan answered quietly. Less than 2 days. The room fell silent. They had expected weeks. Not days. The journey began immediately. Hundreds of wolves left Ashfang together. Villagers stood along the roads, watching silently. Some offered blankets. Others handed out dried food. No speeches were given. No promises were made. Everyone understood the danger ahead. The procession entered the ancient forest before noon. Towering pine trees blocked most of the sunlight. Fresh snow covered every branch. For several hours nothing disturbed the silence. Then, Lyra noticed something unusual. No birds. No rabbits. No tracks. The forest felt empty. Too empty. She looked toward Caelan. Where is everything? They're hiding. From what? He never answered. Instead, he raised one hand. The entire column stopped instantly. One moon guardian stood frozen ahead. Its ears flattened. Its eyes remained fixed upon a narrow clearing. Everyone waited. Nothing happened. A full minute passed. Then, a single enormous footprint slowly appeared in the fresh snow. No creature could be seen. Only the print. Then another. Then another. Something invisible had crossed the trail only moments before. Several warriors stepped backward. The Frost River Alpha whispered. It walks unseen. Caelan's voice remained calm. No. It chooses when to be seen. The footprints suddenly stopped. Complete silence returned. Then, from somewhere deep among the trees, 2 enormous crimson eyes opened. They hovered high above the ground. Watching. Waiting. The creature never attacked. It simply observed the keeper. Lyra felt its gaze like ice against her skin. The pendant around her neck blazed with silver light. The crimson eyes narrowed. For several terrifying seconds, neither side moved. Then the eyes disappeared into darkness. The forest became silent once more. One young warrior collapsed to his knees. What was that? Caelan looked toward the empty trees. It was measuring us. Night fell before they reached the ice cliffs. Campfires burned low beneath towering frozen walls. No one slept peacefully. Moon guardians patrolled the darkness without rest. Lyra sat alone upon a flat stone overlooking the valley. She stared at the stars. So many people are risking their lives because of me. Caelan quietly joined her. They're risking their lives because of what you protect. She looked down at the silver dagger resting across her knees. What if I fail? He smiled gently. When I first met your mother, I asked her the same question. Lyra turned toward him. What did she say? Caelan's eyes reflected the moonlight. She said courage isn't believing you'll win. It's choosing to stand anyway. A quiet smile touched Lyra's face. For the first time, she understood her mother. Not through stories. Through choices. Just before dawn, the lead scouts returned. Their expressions were grim. The Winter Temple. One scout struggled to speak. The gates. They're open. Every alpha froze. Caelan slowly closed his eyes. Only one thing could have opened those gates before the keeper arrived. Someone else had reached the temple first. Far away, inside the ancient sanctuary, the hooded leader of the Fang Council stood before the glowing heart of winter. Dark energy twisted around the sacred chamber. The black crystal pulsed faster with every passing second. The hooded figure smiled beneath the shadows. They're coming exactly as we planned. Behind him, the shadow beast lowered its massive head. Waiting. Not for battle. For its true prey. The keeper had entered the final chapter of her destiny. The Winter Temple stood beneath a sky filled with dark crimson clouds. Massive pillars of white stone, untouched by time, rose from the frozen mountainside like silent guardians watching over the kingdom. Ancient runes shimmered faintly across the walls, struggling against the waves of black energy that spread through every corridor. Snow no longer fell gently. It twisted through the air like frightened spirits fleeing from the darkness gathering inside the sacred sanctuary. Lyra stared at the enormous entrance with a mixture of fear and determination. Every instinct urged her to turn back, but the memory of her mother's sacrifice pushed her forward. The silver pendant resting against her heart pulsed with quiet warmth, reminding her that she had never truly walked alone. Behind her, dozens of allied warriors formed a protective circle while the Moon Guardians watched every shadow surrounding the temple. No one spoke. The silence carried more weight than any battle cry. Caelan slowly stepped beside Lyra, his silver eyes fixed upon the towering gates that had remained sealed for centuries. They've already entered. His calm voice barely rose above the wind. Lyra nodded. I can feel it. The darkness inside the temple seemed alive. It breathed. It waited. Together they crossed the threshold. The moment Lyra stepped onto the ancient stone floor, the doors behind them closed with a thunderous echo that shook the mountain. A deep rumble rolled beneath their feet. Blue light awakened inside thousands of carved symbols covering the walls. The temple had recognized its keeper. For a brief moment, the oppressive darkness retreated. Then another force answered. Black mist poured through the hallways like living smoke, swallowing the glowing symbols one by one. Far ahead, a familiar voice echoed through the endless chamber. You came exactly as I hoped. The hooded leader of the Fang Council emerged from the shadows. For the first time, Lyra saw his face clearly. He was neither young nor old. His pale skin carried strange black markings spreading from his neck toward his temples. His golden eyes glowed unnaturally beneath the hood. Power surrounded him like invisible fire. Behind him floated the shadow crystal, suspended above a circular altar engraved with ancient runes. Dark energy poured from it in endless waves. Caelan immediately drew his sword. You've already destroyed enough. The council leader smiled. I've destroyed nothing. I merely awakened what your ancestors buried. Lyra looked beyond him. At the center of the chamber floated a massive crystal unlike anything she had ever imagined. Pure silver light radiated from its core. It was beautiful, peaceful, yet chains of black energy wrapped around it from every direction. The heart of winter was fighting to survive. The council leader followed her gaze. Magnificent, isn't it? For centuries your family kept this power hidden. They feared strong rulers. They feared unity. Caelan shook his head. They feared tyranny. The man's smile widened. History is written by survivors. He slowly raised one hand. The shadow crystal answered instantly. Dark lightning exploded through the chamber. The ancient floor cracked beneath everyone's feet. The Moon Guardians rushed forward. At the same moment, enormous shadows burst from the surrounding corridors. Creatures formed entirely from black mist lunged toward the defenders. Their glowing crimson eyes filled the sanctuary. Battle erupted. The allied warriors met the creatures with steel and courage. Every strike shattered shadows into smoke, yet new monsters continued emerging from the darkness. Caelan fought at the center of the hall, protecting Lyra while carving a path toward the altar. The Moon Guardians moved like flashes of white lightning. Their glowing fur illuminated the darkness with every leap. Despite their courage, the endless shadows kept advancing. The council leader never moved. He simply watched. Everything unfolded according to his plan. Lyra realized something horrifying. The battle itself was a distraction. He wanted time. Time for the shadow crystal to completely corrupt the heart of winter. She gripped the silver dagger her mother had left behind. Its ancient runes glowed brighter than ever. Without waiting for permission, she began running toward the altar. Lyra! Caelan's warning echoed behind her. Too late. The council leader smiled. I wondered how long it would take. He extended one hand. Invisible force slammed into Lyra. She was thrown backward across the polished floor. The dagger slid from her grasp. Pain shot through her shoulder. Still she struggled back to her feet. The pendant burned against her chest. The heart of winter answered. Silver light erupted from the crystal, surrounding Lyra in a brilliant circle that pushed the darkness away. The council leader's expression changed for the first time. Not anger. Surprise. So. It truly chose you. The temple shook violently. Ancient voices whispered through the chamber in a language forgotten by time. The glowing runes covering the walls awakened together. Caelan looked around in astonishment. The temple is opening. Massive stone doors hidden behind the altar slowly separated. Beyond them stretched a chamber untouched for centuries. At its center stood a simple stone pedestal. Upon it rested a weathered book bound in white leather. The Book of the First Keepers. The council leader's calm finally broke. No. He rushed toward the hidden chamber. The book must never be opened. Before anyone could reach it, the entire sanctuary trembled beneath a roar so powerful that every warrior froze. The ceiling cracked. Stone rained from above. The shadow beast had arrived. Its enormous body crashed through the outer wall of the temple, filling the sanctuary with darkness. Its scales shimmered like black glass. Massive crimson eyes fixed themselves upon Lyra. The beast ignored every warrior. Ignored Caelan. Ignored the council leader. It had only one target. The keeper. For several terrifying seconds, no one moved. Then the beast took one slow step forward. The ancient temple itself seemed to shudder beneath its weight. Lyra tightened her grip on the silver dagger. Fear flooded her heart. But beneath that fear, another feeling slowly emerged. Hope. Her mother had once stood where she now stood. She had chosen courage. Now it was Lyra's turn. The final battle for the heart of winter had begun.